Okay, here we've got a T-connection kit. We're going to connect 3 lines of heat cable together when you're doing a downspout, branching off into a new area on a roof or anything like that. And the tools you're going to need to put this together is a pair of wire cutters or some wire strippers, along with a razor knife, a crimp tool, a small pick tool or something with a fine point, and get some electrical tape. You'll need that. The parts that come in the kit here is, one, you're going to need a 3-way heat shrink breakout boot. So this, I'm going to show you the item out of the package. You've got 2 ports in, and you've got a single port on the other side, and this will seal all your lines together. This is a very important part to this. You will also have your connectors. So you got 2 connectors for your main bus wires and a ground connector for your ground. You'll have 3 pieces of mastic tape, 4 pieces actually. We have 3 that are about 1 1/4 inches, and you have a longer one that's 5 or 6 inches long. And of course, one of your final pieces is your heat shrink sleeve that goes over the entire connection. All right, so let's put this together. We're going to prep our heat cable. We've done videos on this before, so I'm just going to go ahead and do these really fast, and then we'll bring them together and show you how we put these all stacked in for the connection. On this end, you'll want to put your heat shrink on before you start doing your connections if you're in on the roof. Otherwise, you might have some difficulty. So we're going to, if I was installing out in the field, this would go on first. But you're going to slide this down, and this is going to go over the top of this heat shrink. This is a glue-lined boot, so it will seal each one of these heat cable lines and not allowing any water to come through. Okay, so I have prepped my 3 heat cable lines, and we're going to bring these all together into one junction or one connection, and we're going to make sure this is watertight. Many other companies do not do this way, and I have worked with their products, and I've found that at times they fail, and so this is the way we do it to make sure it's watertight and will last for a long time. Each one of these cables has been prepped to receive the mastic tape. We have 3 cables. We have 3 mastic tape pieces, 1 for each cable. Again, let's go over how we apply these. We spread the bus wire to the side so they're parallel. We're going to then place the mastic tape on the underside of the cable to stretch it over the top and wrap it. That wrapping it helps us to create a balance point on these bus wires to encase them in the mastic tape. We press through the center and fold it up. We wrap the mastic tape around the back side, and now we can stand the bus wires up forward. Double check on the sides. Make sure you have a complete coverage around the bus wires and you don't have any bus wire exposed down the side. If you do, I would suggest redoing it. Let's do the next one. Again, if your mastic tape, if it's stiff and you're in cold weather, I've heard of guys, they'll put the pieces of mastic tape in their hats up on their head, and it warms them up after about 2 or 3 minutes, and it makes it more pliable and easier to work with. Obviously, a warm environment, they're going to be more stretchy, and you can get them over things really well. Placing that, folding it over. I'm not stretching it over the top. Some people stretch it over the top. If you do that, you're going to expose the bus wire on the sides right there, like I was explaining. So do not stretch it when you go over the top. Okay, so now we have all 3 of these prepped. I'm going to take 2 of these and I'm going to stack them together, but I'm going to bring this ground braid off to the side along with this ground braid. Bring it off to the side, and I'm going to stack them one on top of the other. just like that. My key thing that I'm looking for is I want to make sure the bus wires are lining up at the same point right here, and that the mastic tape is lined up at the same. If you're not consistent with the way you put this together, you will not see consistency in lining those up. Once I have that, I'm going to twist these together nice and tight, and making sure that I have now one bus wire line. Let's do the same thing for the second one. I'm going to twist those together nice and tight. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get it ready so I can put my connector on here. And the flare at the bottom of the connector, I want to go over the mastic tape as much as possible. So I want it to sit about like that, which means I want to cut it at the midpoint. Now this is a part where a lot of people make mistakes. If you cut too much off, you're not going to have any bus wire for the crimp to get a hold of. So if you cut it too short, you're going to have to redo it. If you cut it too long, you may have bus wire exposed. So at this point, I want this to come on and go all the way down so I can push the connector down over the top of the mastic tape. Now, you can see I have my bus wires were the same length, and I can see my crimp is going to connect the connector to the bus wire itself, not the mastic tape. I'm going to pinch that down, give it a good push, and I'm going to pull on it, and I can feel that's on there really good. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Slide it on. I'm going to push it down over the mastic tape, make sure they're even at the end. Crimp that down. At this point, I can see that the mastic tape is down around the flare of the connector, and there is no bus wire exposed. And I can confirm before my bus wires came up past the crimp, so there's a good connection in here. Loose connections cause things to fail, so make sure they are not loose. Make sure these are nice and tight. Okay, now we're going to take this one and we're going to connect it to the end of that. If you are working with a single bus wire line, you can cut this a little bit further up and fold that bus wire over to give the crimp more surface and more material to get a hold of. Now, let's go ahead and connect these together. I like putting my crimp on, or my crimper on the crimp beforehand, and I can feel those sliding in nice and neat. I'm going to push with my right hand into it. I'm going to crimp that down. I'm going to come over on this side and do the same thing. There we go. Always check your material, give it a tug, and we're solid right there. I'm going to open up the center of that so that I can take my mastic tape and slip it up through the center and wrap this connection up. We do this before the ground connects. So let's go ahead and peel this off. Whoop. Okay, so I've slid it through the center of that. I'm going to take this and stretch it, and I'm going to wrap it over the outside of one of these. I'm going to take the excess of this and I'm going to wrap it around my entire connection. Whoop. We can probably discard that. Okay, it is connected, it's sealed. At this point, do an insulation test on this, make sure your connection's good, and it's not testing bad. Okay, so now we've got this. We want to connect the ground braids together. I'm going to take my 2 that's on this end, and I'm going to twist those together like so. And I do want to twist this one up just so it's narrow. You can put the 2 together like so and put the crimp on. I prefer to slide one end in and then put this one in the other way. With that much wire, we're not going to be able to do that. With a cable to cable, we can. Okay, so we'll do the 2 together. Okay, there we go. So I put my ground on the 2 ground lines, but I'm going to leave some play in there so that the flex, or if the angle of the connection it doesn't tighten up too much in one area. And I'm going to go ahead and crimp that down. And I do every part of it so it flattens out completely. And I want to fold that back in. And then I'm going to put electrical tape and wrap around this so that I don't have any sharp points from the ground crimp poking through my heat shrink. So let's go ahead and take our electrical tape and wrap that up. Okay. All right, so we've got that taken care of. At this point, you'll want to do a test on this. You've got your ground connected, you've got your bus wires connected, do an insulation test, and check your connection before you seal it all up. Your next step is you're going to put this heat shrink sleeve on. Obviously, I'm working with short pieces, so I put it on this end. You'll want to put your heat shrink on before you start doing your connections if you're in on the roof. Otherwise, you might have some difficulty. So we're going to slide that over. And I want that, I'm going to put my thumb on this side, I'm going to slide it over, look at where my halfway point is. I know my halfway point is going to be here, so I'm going to slide this back to that point, and I'm going to heat this up. We're going to shrink this on before we put the boot on. So let's go ahead and heat this up. I always check my ends, make sure I press into that, make sure that the glue inside the heat shrink is sealing to the wire. That's going to ensure that's going to be there. Let's go ahead and finish off the other end. Okay. Now, this always goes on last. Do not put this on and then have your main heat shrink cover this, because then you can't see that the connection has the proper boot. So we're going to slide this on. Yeah, if I was installing out in the field, this would go on first. But you're going to slide this down, and this is going to go over the top of this heat shrink. This is a glue-lined boot, so it will seal each one of these heat cable lines and not allowing any water to come through. Okay. And that is our T-connection kit. You can see we have sealed every line coming in with a glue-lined heat shrink sleeve or boot, whatever's required there, but it's not going to allow water to come into the connection system itself. Other systems where you've got silicone, you might have some other adhesives, stacked heat shrink, or mastic tape. I've found that they have leaked. We've been using these for years, and we've never had any problems with these unless somebody doesn't put them together right, which happens especially with DIY people that are not trained. So this is the proper way to put these together, and this is what we have found to be the most reliable.